Walk into a village, you get into a little spat with somebody, you end up killing the chief's son, well, you just made enemies for life. And so what McChrystal figured out was we were really hurting our efforts. We were actually stepping back every time we went into a forward engagement looking for the Taliban or looking for bin Laden or whatever the mission was. Every time we encountered the locals, we were actually stepping back because we did not have a way to stop the collateral damage. And he came back and started talking about this in earnest in 2000. This is what we call the McChrystal Doctrine. He actually wrote up a big plan for how we were going to win in Afghanistan, or what the exit strategy was better. And this is the Appendix E that actually talks about this. Since that time, General Mills, who's in charge of all the Marines in Afghanistan, he was just interviewed a month ago, and he came back and said, what we're lacking over here is the ability to break contact with the domestic or the civilians and not cause injuries. We need capabilities where we can encounter, engage, break contact, and not leave any collateral damage. And that sent a murmur through the entire Pentagon, because what he was saying is we need non-lethal capabilities. Why is that a murmur? Two things. What is the military trained to do? Anybody? Basically, in the harshest sense, kill. What they will tell you is to eliminate threats. Well, if you take this another way, can a taser eliminate a threat? If you incapacitate somebody so that they cannot fire back or harm you, haven't you eliminated that threat? That's forward thinking. The problem we have right now, or the challenge we have as an industry and as a company, anybody that's in the non-lethal world will look at this and say, the problem is the iron colonels. These are the guys that have worked their way up through the ranks, will never become generals. They're stuck in the colonel's ranks. They report to the 1 and 2 stars who are making all the decisions. Those are the ones that are sitting there saying, do we need this type of weapon on our soldiers or not? Well, hell no, we don't. I chewed dirt for breakfast, and I didn't have one, and I survived. That's their mentality, and God bless them. You know, that's where they came from. You talk to the 25-year-old lieutenant who's rotating back, and he said, if I had an ability to enter a village, engage them, eliminate threats, but not kill the threat, and then disengage, we'd win this war. It's a different mindset. And that has to change inside the skin of the Pentagon, and it has to change inside the mentality of the American people, but I think we're getting there. It's not a great thing to build a business model on. Hey, boss, we're going to sell as soon as we change the thinking inside the Pentagon. When's that going to be? Sometime. You know, I can't predict that. And so, you know, how do we go forward from there? Here's the microcosm. You know, again, we were talking about the big guys. They're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars for this system, $100 million for that system, $1 million for this system. Our top line, $86.7 million. So this is a big deal for us. And here's a little sense of what we go through and what they go through, but they put more zeros at the end of it, is basically what happens. So again, we're going after our core competency, military police. This started 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. This is the 2011 budget, fiscal year 2. Who knows when the fiscal year starts for the federal government? October, exactly. For some unknown reason, only because we could probably. We start our fiscal year October 1, it ends September 30th. So we are currently in fiscal year 11, but it ends September 30th. Fiscal year 12 will start in October again. This budget for fiscal year 11 came out last February, February 2010. This was the president's budget. We started working on talks about this, and the military police talked about it 2 years prior to that as it was being developed. So it was a long time coming. 2 years ago, or last year, I'm sitting in the airport in Charlotte. I'm heading on my way to Austin, Texas to do testimony before their state legislature. My lobbyist calls me, tells me we're in the budget. Not only did we get the line item for $9.3 million, again, $86.7 million is an annual gross, or annual revenue. That's more than 10% of our annual revenue. This is a big deal. But then she tells me in the bottom, down below, and I showed this earlier, I just pulled these out. This is a little breakdown of the non-lethal weapons section of the budget. It's about 15 pages of stuff I don't understand. and it's explanations upon explanations and explanations of the explanations and descriptions of the descriptions, and who knows what's in all this stuff. So it takes a while to read through it. But what she found was they actually projected out 5 years and said, not only are we going to buy 4,700 of these devices in this next fiscal year, we're going to buy 30,000 of them over the next 5 years, total of $46.7 million. 9 a.m. is sitting in an airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. Do you think I was jumping up and down? Yeah, I was pretty happy. Send off the emails, send off a couple voicemails, hop on my plane, fly to Austin, land in Austin. You know what the first voicemail was? My CEO. So do you think we get the money in the first quarter or the second quarter of this year? And I was like, boss, I think we better have a budget discussion, because that's not how it works. That's how it works. This is what every defense contractor company has. They have, actually, the big guys have entire staffs that do nothing but look at the budget. Step one, it's too hard to read, and I can send this to you, or Professor has it in his email. Up in the upper right-hand corner, there. Step one, that started for looking at, and this is actually built out, sorry, this is built out for the 2012 budget on their timeline. But if you were looking at the 2011 budget, you start on step one 2 years prior, and actually a year prior to that. And you have to start putting your numbers in. By the time I got that phone call was at the end of step two. The president reports his budget up to Congress, tells what he wants to spend the money on, here's everything, and then you get into step three, which is Congress going, yeah, we hear you, Prez, but we're not doing that. We're doing what we want to do. And they all wrangle over what's happening. And then in a perfect world, you get to October, and everybody says, yay, we got our budgets, and we move forward. What's happening this year? Yeah, that's basically it. I would add complete disarray also. But it's not, we have no appropriations bills signed into law except the defense bill, and that didn't quite get signed yet, pieces of it did, for 2011's fiscal year. When did we say it started? October 1. So we've been operating for the last 5 months, and on our 6th month, with no money. Now, the federal government keeps working. Social Security checks go out, defense contractors keep getting paid. How do we do that? They pass a continuing resolution that says, you know what, who plays football here? Any football? Right. So what do you do? When you're done 4th and 15, what are you going to do? Get the punter on the field, right? Can't agree on what's happening on, bring the punter on. They go, boom, they kick the ball down the field. They say, you know what, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to say, spend the money that you would spend if it was 2010. Just pretend, spend that amount of money, and we'll rectify this later, and we'll fix it by March 4th. That's what they said. Now, March 4th is next Friday. Are we any closer? No. There you have no agreement. So now, the reason I bring this up is, if you remember back 2 slides, I got $9.3 million in a budget. It's in both the House and Senate appropriations bills. Congress agreed to spend this money. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting here 5 months into the fiscal year, going on my 6th month into the fiscal year, and it still isn't approved. How do you do a business model around that? Back on the phone. Boss, yeah, where's the money? Well, Congress still has it. When do you think we're going to get the money? When Congress releases it. So you're talking about 4,700 of these devices. We produce about 5,000 in a quarter on a regular basis. If this contract comes through, what do we have to do? We're going to increase production. But we can't increase production until we know we got the contract. But once we get the contract, what has to happen? We have to deliver. We anticipate we're going to get the contract, we're going to get the money. So we think this will all get worked out. You know, the big boys will finally decide that fighting amongst themselves doesn't work. Mom's going to come in and beat a bunch of people over the head. We'll probably shut down the government. That's going to go really bad. You know, we'll get there. When they come back out on the other side, they will finally approve the money. Somewhere in April or May is what I anticipate, is we'll get definite assurance that the money's coming our way. But we can't start production at that point, because it then has to go to the agencies, Department of Defense, Department of the Army, and they got to start running through all their procurement processes. All that did was say, you have money you may spend. It's kind of like when you want to, I'll use the example that I always use for my daughter. Daddy, can I get a new skirt? Sure, which one do you want? I don't know, just give me the money. Bad idea, but I give her the money, she runs off, and usually over the weekend it's about 8 to 10, 15 hours of shopping. She had to try on every skirt in the mall, and she finally buys one. That's not different than what the federal government does. They get the money, and then they go figure out what they want to buy. They cannot, they are incapable. It just will not happen in other ways unless the sun rises in the west, that they will actually plan ahead. So they will then go and look at this and say, we got $9.3 million, we got to buy electronic control devices. Boss, there's only one company out there that makes electronic control devices that meets our specs. It's Taser. Yeah, but you better put an RFP out on the street just to make sure. You better do this, you better do that. So they put all the scheme together. Everybody put, it's going to be September until they're ready to spend the money. Okay? I've told my bosses this. They're like, yeah, right, not going to happen. When do we get the money? September. You're going to get the money in September. When do they have to spend it by? September 30th. So what happens to us? Pretty much. We got to produce 4,700 handles, we call these handles, in 1 month. Anybody want to be a defense contractor? It is an ugly business because we are not controlling our own destiny. Somebody else always has that at their end. Now, are we going to sneeze at $9.3 million? Absolutely not. We're going to take it. We're going to figure out a way through it. We're putting contingency plans in. There are more whiteboards covered with plans on how we're going to do this. And a lot of smart people inside our company all agreeing with each other. And I get to be the one that says, yeah, it's not going to work that way. A couple things that you need to remember when you're thinking about the defense and aerospace industries. Timelines. President's budget is a 5-year projection. How many people know exactly what they're going to be doing 5 years from now? Come on, you all know what you're going to do. The president just put a budget out to spend $1.3 trillion over the next 5 years, or each year for the next 5 years. He knows exactly what he's doing. Do you think that means anything to anybody? No. Can you build a business model around it? Yes, you have to. It's the only blueprint you have. The other one that's important is the DoD POM. POM is the Program Operations Memorandum. Or in DoD speak, it has probably 14 other acronyms that go with it, and they talk about a bunch of things, but it lays out exactly how that program works. But when you're talking about buying a product, and you're not talking about building a joint strike fighter that may take 5 years, you don't know when these products are going to be bought or how they're going to be bought. They just lay out the program. And then the disconnects come when you start having Congress now has decided they're going to project out 10 years. That's their new game. Nobody knows what 10 years looks like from now. Now, here's a way to look at this. And we were talking about 5 to 20-year projections of the industry looking healthy. 20 years ago was 1991. What would have been the projection of the aerospace and defense industry in 1991? What was the major marker of 1991? End of the Cold War. Would you have invested in a defense company at the end of the Cold War? Absolutely not. Take a look at Lockheed's growth over that 20 years. Probably one of the best investments you could have ever made. We can't predict the future. We don't know what those timelines look like. I'm not picking on you. It's just, it's impossible, but everybody tries to do it. The only one that matters is the last one. 1-year appropriations. Did you get the money or not, and can you convince the agency to actually spend the money that they were given? So a long way of talking about politics. That's all that matters in all of this.